first little bit of vocabulary is we have to talk about these two concepts of chord tones and non-chord tones. Chord tones are easy. If you hear a chord, for example, if we have a C major chord, if you see a chord symbol like this in some music, all you have to do is just know what the notes are of that chord. So if you have a C chord, that would be this combination of notes, C, E, and G. And those three notes are called chord tones. Absolutely every other note that could be played at the same time as those is a non-chord tone. So if I play a C chord and I play the note D, that's not a chord tone. A is not a chord tone. So the idea is that a non-chord tone, this other term, is just all of those cases where you're playing anything other than the notes of the chord. Down below, I've got an example from the Disney piece, When You Wish Upon a Star. And this topmost row on both lines is simply the name of the chord. And for those of you who wouldn't know the names of the notes that comprise each chord, it's okay. Right underneath is are the names of all the notes that make up the chord. So the first chord that shows up in this one is an F chord. And we have the notes F, A, and C. And for anybody who isn't familiar with the notes, the names of the pitches are written underneath here. And you can see quite a few of the notes under any given chord are notes of the chord. They're chord tones. So this note C, this C, and this A, they're all part of an F chord. These two notes, G and D, are both part of the G minor chord. C, E, and C are part of this C chord. And a lot of music does have stuff where you only have chord tones. When you have music that has nothing but chord tones, it tends to get a little too uninteresting. It sounds a little too balanced. And that's when we start using non-chord tones to create a little more interest and more variety in the pitches that we use. So this B flat, for example, there's a certain relationship between it and F major, but the main one is that it's simply not one of those three notes that make up the chord. Same goes for this F sharp and this D. And today I want to go into a little bit of detail as to how to categorize different kinds of non-chord tones, because that's what creates the impact. It's not just that they're non-chord tones, it's actually exactly how they fit into the chord. So the first two kinds of non-chord tones we're going to talk about are called passing tones and connecting tones. Let's say you have one measure of music. Let's say that it's supposed to be an F chord, like the first chord at the beginning. So remember, you just need the notes F, A, and C as chord tones. The idea is that, during an F chord, maybe I'll draw a box to show the entire measure. If I have the note A, which is a chord tone, and I have the note C, and I move up in order, a passing tone would be, for example, something like B flat, because B flat is a note that's in between A and C. If you were to see this written down in sheet music, you would see this kind of motion. Notice how it moves unidirectionally. So I can draw a continuous arrow that connects A to C. And every single note is a step apart. You can see in the sheet music that every note is a step. So a passing tone is any kind of non-chord tone like this B flat that is it's sandwiched in between two different chord tones. And it connects them in stepwise unidirectional motion, should only travel one way. If this B flat is a passing tone, this note B, which also resides in between them in stepwise motion, is also a passing tone. And same goes for if I have, say, A, G, F. In this case, again, A and F are chord tones because they're part of the F chord, and G is a passing tone. Very closely related are these things called connecting tones. So connecting tones, you could just think about them as a bunch of passing tones. In some examples between chord tones, for example, I've been giving you examples where the notes are 3 notes apart. F and A are a third apart. So you can fit exactly 1 note in between them, something like B or B flat. But sometimes you run into a problem. Is there a way to connect something like C to the F above it? So that's like if I want to go from this C to this F. And if you recognize the interval, you might notice that there's space for 2 letters in between, C, D, E, and F. So C and F are both chord tones, but the D and E that I'm skipping over, what if I actually played both of them? And both of them together are non-chord tones. They're not part of the F chord. They're connecting tones. So connecting tones are pretty much just a group of passing tones, pretty much. They still connect in stepwise motion. And if I could fit any more notes in between these guys, then they also are considered passing tones. So if I put the note E flat in between all of this, those are all passing tones.